was a peaceful evening in Pinewood, a small town nestled in a valley surrounded by lush forests. Families were finishing dinner, kids were playing, and the elderly sat on their porches, sharing stories of simpler times. Suddenly, the serene night was shattered by an eerie orange glow on the horizon. The wildfire started without warning, spreading faster than anyone could have imagined. Fierce winds fanned the flames, and within hours, entire neighborhoods were reduced to ashes. People ran for their lives, clutching their pets and the few belongings they could grab. The air was thick with smoke, choking those trying to flee. Evelyn, a 70-year-old widow, stood frozen in her front yard, clutching a photo album. It was all she had left of her late husband and their memories together. Tears streamed down her face as the flames inched closer. She whispered, "Lord, save us." The next morning, the news spread like wildfire itself. Images of the devastation reached every corner of the world. Among those watching was 17-year-old Barron Trump, who felt a pull in his heart that he couldn't explain. Little did anyone know, this was the beginning of something extraordinary. Barron Trump was no stranger to headlines, but this time it wasn't about him. Watching the news, he saw faces filled with despair, especially Evelyn's. The photo of her clutching her album stayed with him, haunting his thoughts. He turned to his father, former President Donald Trump, and said, "Dad, I want to help. These people need us." Donald Trump, known for his bold personality, looked at his youngest son and saw something different. Barron's towering frame, now over 6 feet 7 inches, was no longer the only thing that stood out. There was a determination in his eyes, a sense of purpose. "What do you have in mind, son?" Donald asked, leaning back in his chair. Barron hesitated, but then said, "Something personal, something they'll remember, not just money, but hope." His father nodded. "You've got my support, but this is your mission. Make it count." Barron spent the night researching Pinewood's story, learning about its people, their culture, and their struggles. He wasn't sure how, but he knew he had to bring them hope, something they could hold on to when all seemed lost. The next morning, Barron woke up with an idea. He remembered something his mother, Melania, often told him. True kindness comes from the heart, not the wallet. That advice guided his plan. He reached out to his father's contacts, ensuring that supplies would reach Pinewood quickly. But Barron wanted to do more than just send donations. He wanted to be there, to meet the people, to show them that they weren't alone. He convinced his parents to let him travel to Pinewood under strict security. Donald was hesitant at first, but seeing his son's resolve, he agreed. "Make sure you're safe, Barron. And remember, people will look to you as a symbol of hope. Don't let them down." When Barron arrived in Pinewood, the devastation was far worse than the news had shown. Entire streets were gone, replaced by blackened earth. The air smelled of soot, and the sky was still gray. But as he walked through the rubble, Barron spotted Evelyn. She was sitting on a charred bench holding her album. Their eyes met, and Barron felt an overwhelming sense of purpose. He approached her and said softly, "Ma'am, I'm here to help." Evelyn looked up at the tall young man standing before her. She didn't recognize him at first, her vision blurred by tears. Her frail hands trembled as she clutched her photo album tighter. "Ma'am, I'm here to help," Barron said gently, his voice steady, but filled with concern. Evelyn wiped her face with a handkerchief and looked closer. She had seen that face on TV before. You're Barron Trump?" she asked, her voice trembling as much as her hands. "Yes, ma'am," Barron replied, kneeling to meet her gaze. "I heard about what happened, and I couldn't just sit by. I want to help you and everyone here." Evelyn's tears flowed again, but this time they weren't only from sorrow. There was something about Barron's sincerity that broke through her pain. "This was my home, she whispered. Everything I had is gone. Barron placed a comforting hand on her shoulder. Your memories aren't gone, ma'am. They're right here, he said, pointing to her album. And I promise, we'll make sure you have a place to rebuild those memories. For the first time in days, Evelyn managed a faint smile. She didn't know how, but she believed him. That evening, Barron called his father. He stood outside Evelyn's temporary shelter, looking at the charred remains of what was once her home. Dad, Barron said, his voice heavy with emotion, this is worse than I imagined. The people here, they've lost everything. Donald Trump listened quietly on the other end of the line. For all his public bravado, he was deeply moved by his son's determination. You're doing something great, Barron, he finally said. But remember, rebuilding isn't just about money or materials. It's about hope. If you can give them that, you'll have done more than anyone else. Barron nodded, though his father couldn't see him. I understand, Dad, but I want to make this personal. I don't want them to feel like they're just a news story. Donald chuckled softly. You're your mother's son. She always said that kindness is what truly sets people apart. Do what you feel is right, Barron. And remember, I'm here to support you in any way I can. Barron ended the call feeling more determined than ever. He had a plan forming in his mind, one that would require all his heart and effort. The next day, Barron gathered a group of volunteers from the town. Many were hesitant at first. They didn't know what a wealthy teenager could possibly offer. But as Barron spoke, his sincerity won them over. We're going to rebuild, one step at a time, he said. I'm not here to just give you things. I'm here to work with you. He started small, helping Evelyn plant a garden in the ashes of her yard. This is where my roses used to grow, she said wistfully, handing him a trowel. Barron smiled and began digging. Then, let's make sure they bloom again. Word spread quickly about Barron's hands-on approach. Soon, others joined him. They cleared debris, set up makeshift shelters, and even held small gatherings to keep spirits high. But Barron wasn't done. Behind the scenes, he was organizing something bigger, something that would show the people of Pinewood that they were not forgotten. As he worked tirelessly, Evelyn watched him with tears in her eyes. He's not just helping us rebuild our town, she whispered to a neighbor. He's rebuilding our faith in humanity. As Barron worked alongside the townspeople, he noticed a small soot-covered envelope among the debris. Picking it up carefully, he opened it to find a letter written in a shaky hand. It read, Dear Lord, I don't know how much more we can take. My husband passed years ago, and my grandchildren live far away. I've always been proud to call this town my home, but now I feel like I've lost everything. Please send us a sign that we're not alone. Amen. Barron was silent for a long time, clutching the letter. He looked around at the destruction, the people working hard to salvage what they could. This was the sign he had been searching for, the push he needed to act even more boldly. He called his father again that evening, his voice filled with urgency. Dad, I need your help. We're going to organize a relief fund, but I want it to be personal. I want every person in this town to feel seen and supported. Donald Trump, moved by his son's passion, replied, I'll call my contacts. You'll have everything you need, Barron. Let's show them what we can do together. The following week, trucks began rolling into Pinewood, carrying supplies, food, and building materials. But it wasn't just the donations that caught the townspeople's attention. It was the people who stepped off those trucks. Doctors, therapists, and volunteers from across the country had come, inspired by Barron's initiative. Celebrities joined the effort too, bringing visibility to Pinewood's plight. Among them were Melania and Donald Trump, who arrived to show their support. Evelyn couldn't believe her eyes when she saw Donald Trump helping unload supplies. You're here? She asked, her voice trembling. Donald gave her a warm smile. When my son cares, I care. We're here to rebuild this town, ma'am. Barron wasn't just helping rebuild homes. He was rebuilding lives. He ensured that the elderly, like Evelyn, received special attention. Volunteers helped set up gardens, repair homes, and host community dinners. Pinewood was beginning to feel alive again. Evelyn, overwhelmed with gratitude, hugged Barron one evening. "You're an angel, sent straight from heaven," she said, tears streaming down her face. Barron, though deeply moved, replied humbly, "I'm just doing what feels right, ma'am." One quiet evening, Barron suggested holding a vigil to honor what the town had lost, but also to celebrate its resilience. The townspeople gathered in the center of Pinewood, each holding a candle. Evelyn stood beside Barron, her frail hands gripping his arm. "Thank you," she whispered. Barron addressed the crowd. "I know you've faced more pain than words can describe, but look around you. You've survived. Together, we'll rebuild something even stronger. And this town, your town, will never be forgotten." As the crowd lit their candles, the darkness of the night was replaced by a warm, flickering glow. People wept openly, holding each other and sharing stories of hope. Donald Trump, standing beside his wife, placed a hand on Barron's shoulder. "You've done something incredible, son," he said, his voice filled with pride. The vigil was broadcast live, and millions around the world watched in awe. Messages of love and support poured in, proving that kindness could indeed ripple out to touch countless lives. The night ended with a sense of unity and hope that Pinewood hadn't felt in years. As the days passed, Pinewood began to look like a town reborn. But Barron's journey wasn't over. While helping Evelyn sort through the rubble of her old home, they found a small metal box beneath the ash. "What's this?" Barron asked, carefully lifting it out. Evelyn's eyes widened. "It's my late husband's keepsake box. I thought it was gone forever." Inside, they found letters written by Evelyn's husband during their courtship. One letter, however, stood out. It wasn't addressed to her, but to their future generations. In it, he had written, "To those who come after us, no matter how hard life becomes, remember that hope is your greatest ally. Our town has survived many storms, and with God's grace, it will endure again." Evelyn clutched the letter to her chest, her tears flowing freely. She looked at Barron and said, "You were meant to find this. It's as if he's speaking to us from heaven, telling us to keep going." Barron, deeply moved, knew this letter was a sign. He decided to make sure the entire town would see it as a symbol of their shared resilience. Barron had the letter framed and placed it in the town square. He arranged a ceremony, inviting every resident to gather and read the words aloud together. Cameras from major networks captured the moment as the people of Pinewood stood united, honoring the message of hope. The story went viral. People around the world began sharing their own stories of resilience, inspired by the letter and Barron's actions. Donations poured in, not just for Pinewood, but for other towns affected by disasters. Celebrities, world leaders, and ordinary citizens joined the movement, proving that one act of kindness could indeed spark a global wave of compassion. Donald Trump, watching from the sidelines, felt an overwhelming sense of pride. He turned to Barron and said, "You've done more than rebuild a town. You've shown the world that humanity is still alive and well." Barron smiled but stayed humble. "I didn't do it alone, Dad. It's the people here. They're the real heroes." But the greatest surprise came when Evelyn handed Barron a simple envelope. Inside was a check for $10, the last of her savings. "Use it to help someone else," she said, her voice trembling. Barron hugged her, promising to honor her wish. Months later, Pinewood was thriving again. New homes stood where ruins once were, and gardens bloomed with vibrant colors. Evelyn's yard, once barren, was now filled with roses, just as it had been before the fire. Barron returned to the town for a final visit. As he walked through the streets, children ran up to hug him, and adults shook his hand with tears of gratitude. Evelyn stood by her garden, holding a freshly cut rose. "This is for you," she said, handing it to Barron. "It's a symbol of everything you've done for us. You've brought us back to life." Barron accepted the rose with misty eyes. He looked at the townspeople and said, "I may have planted the seeds, but you're the ones who made them grow. This is your victory." As he boarded the plane home, Barron looked back one last time, knowing Pinewood would always be a part of him. The town wasn't just rebuilt, it was renewed, with hope lighting the way forward. A message for you. Thank you so much for joining me on this emotional journey. If this story touched your heart, please take a moment to like, comment, and share it with others. Let's spread the message of hope and kindness far and wide. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel for more stories that inspire, uplift, and remind us of the power of humanity. Your support means everything.